MONERO 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. Today is Monday, February 10th, 2020. I have the pleasure of interviewing Bill Murphy. He's chairman and director of GATA and owner of lemetropolecafe.com website. I've known Bill or been in touch with Bill since around 2002 when I started following the gold market. I used to work in the city at the time, and I had time to keep an eye on the price action all the time. And I found some awkward or strange moves in the price, always at the same time. And I thought, what's going on here? The markets didn't move like this. They moved a little more randomly than gold. Please, Bill, before we start with the interview, could you tell a little bit, the viewers, a little bit about yourself and how you got involved with GATA?
Sure, Mario. Thanks for having me on. It's great to be here. I've been around the commodity markets since the mid-'70s, way back when at Shearson, and even I met Ray Dalio, who was starting out Bridgewater Associates. We became good friends, traveled all over. Of course, he's now the biggest hedge fund manager in the world. And then I got to know Frank Veneroso, who was a legend in the commodity business too, with Drexel Burnham, and followed Frank for years. And the internet was getting going, and I decided to start writing about the gold and silver markets because I knew something about it via Frank and this and that, and started the Metropole Cafe in 1998, September, and long-term capital management blew up and realized that this isn't right. I mean, the gold market should explode. And I know from Frank, who wrote the gold book, that central banks were leasing out a bunch of gold and gold wasn't there as much. And so I started complaining about it. My colleague, Chris Powell, by that time a subscriber, Chris Powell said, "I'm tired, Bill, of you complaining about the rigging of the gold prices," which is what I saw from the bullion banks. He said, "Let's do something about it." So we started the Gold Antitrust Action Committee in early 1999. I've been at it for all these years since, and Chris does a great job. It's a secretary treasurer, and we've been good friends all this time. And we're exposing the manipulation of the gold price by the bullion banks, the central banks, Exchange Stabilization Fund, Bank for International Settlement. It's going to be a big, big, big scandal someday.
Would you say the Bank of England is also involved?
Absolutely. The Bank of England is right in it. I think one thing you wanted to touch base on was one of those things about Gordon Brown and the English.
Yeah, that's right. And what about lemetropolecafe.com? What do you do there on that site?
I write a commentary every day. Been doing it for all these years, and there's some other people that post stuff, and people can sign up for a 2-week free trial at lemetropolecafe.com and see if it's of interest. And we're leading to something absolutely spectacular. We can get into all that, but that's what I do.
Okay, so let's start. First question, why is gold so important to the financial system?
Well, gold's been part of financial history, and gold is what it is. And of course, silver is allied with it. And it's competitive to other monetary situations and money. And the thing is, as we all know, gold is, as I said, gold is what it is. And yet this money system, I mean, you can touch base on that later. They're going berserk. And how much money is out there? 10 trillion, 20 million, 30 million budget deficits. And when you look at gold and silver, it is what it is. And it's gone up through the years. And in many countries, except for Switzerland, I think in the United States, it's at all-time highs. It's because people know its value, and it's had a value of 5,000 years. What we're printing today, and we can get into some of this subject, what's going on, who knows? And this is what GATA is all about. It's exposing the suppression of the gold and silver prices to prevent people from realize what's really going on. So people have a real value in what in gold and what it stands for.
Okay, and how long have central banks been manipulating or controlling the price of gold and silver, would you say?
Well, go back to the confiscation of gold in 34. I mean, where you had to turn your gold into the treasury, and then the gold, then they could exchange gold for $35 an ounce, and the gold French was taking all the gold away, and the United States couldn't do it anymore, and the gold price had to be freed up. And I know from 1999 forward how much they're involved in manipulating the gold and silver prices. And they had to manipulate silver too because it's a monetary metal like gold is, and they couldn't have a big divergence. So that's how they got involved in that.
Yeah, and I think also in the 60s, there was the London gold pool, which was an
Exactly.
overt manipulation, right?
That well, you had the London gold pool, and yeah, I mean, the price was steady, and they just couldn't control it anymore.
And yeah, another question, number three, I guess. Would you tell the viewers a little bit about the strong dollar policy of Rubin and Summers in the 90s and why it was so important that gold was part of that uh, strategy, and a little bit about Gibson's paradox, if you could talk
Gibson's
about that.
paradox. One of our followers, a Harvard lawyer, great guy, Red Chow, wrote an article, Gibson's Paradox and the Gold Standard, and Larry Summers wrote a paper with a guy named Barsky way back when about the relationship between gold and prices and interest rates. And basically, the bottom line is, well, and for Gibson's paradox, is that gold should move inversely to interest rates. And again, it has to do with prices. But what what the manipulators and what the people behind this all have done is to control the gold price. Gold's the barometer of U.S. financial market health. Happens all the time. Gold goes up $100. Ooh, what's wrong?
Yeah.
So they realized that if they could control the gold price, they could control perceptions. Paul Volcker, former U.S. Fed governor, said gold up is bad, gold down is good. So they keep it secret. It's the most secret thing in the world. My colleague Chris Pallas said over the years that the United States would rather release its nuclear secrets than what they're really doing in the gold market. The people won't talk about it. You send stuff to the press, they won't mention it. It's
Yeah.
the most taboo subject you can imagine, and it's really going to lead to something spectacular.
Okay. So can you just elaborate a little bit on what Robert Rubin was doing at the U.S. Treasury in relation to gold?
Well, Robert Rubin was involved in keeping the gold price suppressed because the Fed's involved in the suppression prices, the bullion banks, and the U.S. Treasury. And he realized, for the reasons just mentioned, that you keep the gold price under control. And it says everything. It's again the barometer. It says, okay, everything's copacetic. Things are good in the financial markets, and that's the most important thing, just to keep gold under control. And so it doesn't uh, get people check into what's really going on in the financial system.
Yeah, and Rubin as well was started out as in the precious metals department at Goldman Sachs, didn't he?
Yeah.
Jay Aaron and co. So he knew about the gold market.
We know all about it, what's going on and what's been going on behind the scenes forever and why they try to control it. And he was a master.
All right. This question is some people might be asking why, if gold is manipulated, why has the price gone up so much since 2000? And what is your answer to those people?
It's a very good question. Gold went up for 12 years in a row through 2011 gradually, and it went up a certain amount each year. It was very quiet control, but it went up. Eventually, we can get into this. They lost control in 2001 when it bottomed out at 254. But they had to just, they couldn't just, they didn't want it to blow up. Gold going up during that time didn't affect a thing. And then in 2011, I think when the U.S. debt was downgraded, it exploded to 2019, and they went into a totally different attack on the gold price and butchered it for the next, number of years and took it all the way back down to, I don't know, what was it,
1,045?
And then the physical demand got so strong that they realized that, the price had to start going back up again because they were running out of physical supply. I could touch base on it later. That's the key today. Meanwhile, in silver, strangest thing you can ever imagine. It goes to 50 for the second time in many years. It was at 50 in 1980, goes to 49 change in 2011 May, 6 months before gold top. And then JP Morgan got involved and it collapsed. And what's interesting for people to know, because this is what I do, the open interest, which is the long and shorts in the Comex, was 135,000 contracts all the way up, meaning the number of longs and shorts. Today it's 220,000, even though the price is normally open interest goes up with price. As you said, 220,000. It's been this way for years at all-time highs, and that represents what JP Morgan got involved in. I've always been involved, I guess, but went berserk since 2011, manipulating the paper price in the Comex, taking it down to ridiculous levels at 1350 and change. Now it's started to move up. The gold silver ratio is 88 to 1. It should be something like 30 or 40. Silver is the most underpriced asset in the world. and JP Morgan is still controlling it. They're losing control of gold. They haven't lost control yet of silver. But when they do, it's going to 50 and then to 100. And it'll happen very fast, in my opinion. But it's still, they're just going nuts with it.
Okay. What about who are the major conspirators in controlling or manipulating the price of gold and silver, and what market mechanisms do they use to implement this control?
Well, very good question. You got the Fed, Treasury, the bullion banks. As I mentioned, JP Morgan. By the way, who the Justice Department just recently called a criminal enterprise. I mean, how bad is that? Nothing's happened yet, but it's coming from manipulating the precious metals markets. You got, as I said, the bullion banks, the Bank for International Settlements, which probably controls the thing out of Switzerland. It's one big major operation, and it's been very effective. What was the second part of your question?
What mechanisms do they use, like
Yes,
leasing and futures and ETFs?
Well, that's it. They use the futures market on the Comex and the over-the-counter market. They use leasing operations. They sell gold outright. And this is, what they do. And there's a thing called exchange for physicals, which nobody can explain to me. Exchange for physical is a term in which is one of our people, Harvey Organ's done a great job. It's up to like 12 or 15,000 contracts a day. An exchange for physical is simple. Your long futures contract, and you change that futures contract for physical. There's all these things that happen every day, and nobody can say what's really going on, and they're massive numbers.
And exchange for physical, it doesn't even mean that the person who's long gets the delivery of physical,
well, that's a
does
very
it?
good point, Mary. No, and I can't get anyone to explain it. And I've had some of the smartest people in the world, and they go, can you explain this to me, exactly what's going on? Initially, they thought it was, with gold, couldn't deliver it here, so it's going over to London to get delivered there. We're talking about 5, 10, 15,000 contracts a day for years. It means something, and it's mega, but I don't know what it is. And what I do know, we can get into, this kind of thing, the shenanigans, as I call it, is starting to have its effect, and it has since the end of May when gold started to move. And the bad guys are in trouble because they're running out of physical gold. Because we think the actual gold left in the world can be encumbered like 50, 100, 150 times over. In other words, there's claims on the same physical gold in various operations. And we think that's coming to a head and should come into focus sometime this year.
Yeah, that's the encumbered gold is like when the bullion banks lease the gold from the central banks and then hypothecate it and then sell it into the market short, right?
Yes, everyone did, or they're selling the same. People think there's the same ownership. The bullion banks is leasing out the gold, and they sell to 100 people. You own this gold.
1 ounce.
1 ounce of gold, 100 people own it. So in other words, and they get the money to operate for a physical world. It's a lot of money that they can use in the financial markets, and you tell them, yes, you own this gold. Yes, you own this gold. No, you don't. It's gone. So when all of a sudden the S hits the fan, it's going to blow up, and it's coming. And it's a gradual process because it's about the richest and most powerful people in the world, but they're losing in the gold market right now. It's only a matter of time.
Good. This next question, should interest a lot of my viewers here in the UK. If some of you might not know, I am in London. So the question is, what do you know about the Gordon Brown bottom? Because there are rumors that the gold sale was pre-announced to help the bullion banks who were getting short squeezed. If that was so, why would Gordon Brown go out of his way to help the banks and sell off half of the UK's gold reserves?
Well, this is what happened in May of 1999. I think it was May 6th, 7th. Gordon Brown announced that England would sell half its gold, and the gold price, they were starting to lose control, this kind of thing. So then all the bankers are in cahoots with each other. This is what they do. And Gordon Brown said, well, he was going to become the hero and sell half of England's gold. And this is what got most of the people that got a case said nobody would announce, and they did it in advance. And it took 2 years. And said, we're going to sell half our gold. The gold price went dead for another couple of years.
And I think at that time it was spiking over 300, and then it dropped massively.
It was always a 300 thing, and it bottomed out. And I think it was GATA's conference in South Africa, and what was it, March of of 2001, the price at 254, and it's been going up since then. So people realize hey, wait a second, this thing, it was exactly what God has been talking about for 20 years. It was rigged, and Gordon Brown was happy to be the big shot among the bankers. And again, as I mentioned, that's when a lot of people said God is right, because people said, no, that couldn't be rigged. They said, yep, God is right.
And do you think it was because the bullion banks were in trouble?
They were starting to get in trouble, like they are now again. It goes a different time. They were running out of supply at that time at such a low price. And so Brown came to the rescue.
Okay. All right. Another question, and this goes back probably to the time when you started in the market. How important was the creation of the gold futures, or GC, on December 31st, 1974 on Comex, in suppressing physical demand after gold as an investment or savings was made legal again in the US on January 1st, 1975?
Well, my colleague, Chris Powell, has uncovered a document that was written many, many years ago where they admitted they created the gold futures market to help rig the gold price. And that's exactly what's happened all this time at various stages. It's very simple. This is what they do. The major shorts is this group I call the bullion banks, or the gold cartel. Excuse me, they're the big shorts in the market. And this is, the open interest goes up. When it goes up, they sell. They use the futures market to control the gold price. And that's the fun part after all these years, as I keep saying, that are in a process of blowing up. The gold market has changed totally this past year, 6 months. With this gold open interest, which I keep talking about, the longs and shorts, the all-time high was 665,000. It went up to 800,000 contracts. And it just come back about to the old all-time high, because all of a sudden, the bad guys, as I call them, can't stay as short as they were. And normally the longs, over the years, this gold cartel has flushed out the speculative longs time and time again. They just wiped them out. This time, the speculative longs, I think, know what's going on. They're major players, a lot of them, not all of them, know what's going on, and they're not getting flushed out on dips. All the dips in gold's getting bought. And it reflects the problem this gold cartel has, and they've covered for the first time in history on rallies. I went up last week or two. On 4 out of 5 days, the gold open interest went down. Pardon me. In 4 out of 5 up days, the gold interest went down something like 50, 100,000 contracts. Never happened before.
I see. Interesting.
Yes, it is. And it's leading to a gold price explosion. And they're doing everything they can to stop it, pulling out all the strings, but they're going to lose. Finally, after all these years, we have an explosion coming. I'm not talking about just, $50, $100. We're talking about new all-time highs in the U.S., well above 2,000. And how fast it happens, we'll see.
And I guess silver will be even more on steroids if they lose control of that.
My big thing. I saw the other day, I interviewed Keith Newmeyer, Sharp, CEO of First Majestic, and I've met him. He's a great guy. He says, I've been wrong for 5 years about the silver price, thanks to J.P. Morgan. He has, and I have too. I never dreamed it would take this long to go. Well, as I said earlier, it's being suppressed incredibly. The gold-silver ratio, 88 to 1. It could be 20 or 30. Back in the old days, it was like 16. That's what J.P. Morgan has done to the silver price. And what I keep saying is when silver takes out 21, it will explode. That's the key level, then to 50, and then to 100. That's going to take some time, but I think it will happen very fast because of what they've done. And it's my opinion, and we'll see. But I think it's going to be one of the most exciting moves in history when it finally goes.
Yeah, and it seems to be like they're using silver actually to stop gold, because they're losing so much control of gold that it's easier to suppress silver. So they do it like that.
And J.P. Morgan can still do it. They don't. Now, in my opinion, what will happen is once the gold price explodes, people are so complacent about the silver price, consumers, investors, hasn't done much. 1350 low, 1780 now, whatever. They really done nothing. When gold explodes, and this is just my opinion, the silver supply, physical supply, will dry up very quickly. All of a sudden, consumers that are just taking it for granted will all rush in, gone. Investors will flock in, and that's when it explodes.
Have you had any support or had any support from major gold mining companies in trying to fight the central banks and the bullion banks, you'd think, that the gold mining industry would jump at the chance of helping you guys out. But I don't think it's as clear cut, right?
We did in the beginning. We had some really great supporters, and they've gone away. We've had some smaller companies, and Seabridge Gold, and we know, Eric Sprott's been a big supporter with his operation, and but it's been very disappointing, and they're just afraid of all the money and power in the banks, and they don't want to get involved. And any other industry would say, okay, look, we're afraid of the bullion banks and permits and stuff like that for a gold company, but we'll get an organization to do it, so then we don't get the blame. That's what's always done. In this case, the World Gold Council, the anti-gold council, as Chris Powell calls it, it helps these operations. It won't do anything about it. Again, all the money and power and colleagues and what they're going to do, they're our worst enemy. We can't get them to do anything. And eventually there'll be a big scandal like a Bernie Madoff and Enron and all the rest of it, and it will blow up. But no, it's pitiful. The press and the gold industry is terrible. And the only guys I mentioned that was willing to speak out on it, one of them is in the silver industry, Keith Neumeier. But it's really a sad state of affairs, and it's hurt the gold prices immensely.
What do you think would have, I guess, if gold hadn't been as suppressed, we probably wouldn't be here at 23 trillion in national debt in the U.S. We wouldn't have the quadrillion in derivatives in the system, right? Is that the flip side?
Well, they've kept the gold price down, so it's not reflected all this debt creation and money pouring in the system. Now you've got this repo madness that's all of a sudden occurring. There's a problem, and they just have to keep more pouring money in the system. Well, if you want to deflect from that, you try to control the gold price. Because we've been talking about, there's big money in the world that understands what's going on. It's very clear. I even mentioned my old friend Ray Dalio is public all over the place on CNBC saying that you should be involved in gold, and he was never a gold guy really before, too much. The big smart money knows what's coming and what they're doing, and it's going to blow up on them.
Have GATA held conferences in the past, and are you guys planning to hold another one soon?
Well, we've held conferences, and we had one up in Alaska in 2000. We went to Durban in South Africa in 2001, 2005 up in Africa. Up in Alaska. Then we had one in Washington in 2008. We had a spectacular one in London, up your way, to Savoy Hotel in 2011. Right before the month before the gold topped out. It was really a lot of fun. And my goal now is to have one final conference to celebrate a victory when it all happens and gold and silver explode, and we can come and celebrate, talk about all that went on, and have some fun. Enough as I call the bitching. We'll see where it's going to be, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to that one.
Great. Okay. That's it. Maybe you just want to tell the viewers again where they can find information about GATA and also about your newsletter. Sure, just Mario, to finish off.
People can go to www.gata.org, and Chris Powell puts out a lot of information. It's great stuff. It's free. This is my business. People can sign up at La Metropole Cafe for a 2-week trial. If they like it, they can sign up. We've been at it, 20, 21 years, and love what I do, and it's something to really be excited about what's coming and be able to sail off at the sunset, hopefully at the GATA conference with a big victory.
Just one final question. What would you tell the viewers a way to fight the bullion banks and the central banks buying physical gold, right? Physical gold and silver.
Buying physical, yeah. I understand what's coming. There's no telling. There's people have numbers, and it's just numbers. There's no telling what the gold price can do. There's all kinds of numbers. But 3,000 to 5,000, you've heard as much as 60,000, who knows? And I'm just confident that silver is going to go to at least 100. It was at 50 40 years ago. and once it all blows up. So that it will hurt the bad guys by buying physical gold and silver, and it's going to be a tremendous investment still.
Great. Thank you very much, Bill. I'll be looking forward to having you on again. Maybe next time it will be when the bad guys lose their war.
When we'll see that when they're backpedaling now, but when they really are in trouble. And thanks for all you do, Mario.
You're welcome. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.